Cool. So what we're doing in the meantime, this shiur and a few others, we're just reading through questions that we once asked, and then we will go and after that when we finish. But in the meantime, we go through the questions. I put the question on the board. Okay, so I think we got to question number 5. I think I'm correct. It's question number 5. Is a touch considered wrong if it enhances a relationship, meaning a different form of comfort plus understanding in a positive way? So the question here is about a physical connection before marriage, and I think that there are a few things to say about this. Now, this is really something that in the modern world, it's something that's people can't understand it even. How can there not be physical contact between two people that maybe love each other or serious about each other, or maybe even thinking about building a life together, but they've never had any physical connection between them? But there's also another question here, and that is about emotional security. And that many times we feel that we need emotional security. And you're all MTA tzaddikim, but every year I take limud to Poland, and limud is co-ed, it's mixed. And when you're in Poland, so people feel that you need some kind of consolation and you need a good hug, put it this way. And obviously, the boys and the girls, they don't necessarily, not obviously, but anyway, they don't necessarily limit themselves to hugging the people of the same sex and of their gender, and they hug the other people as well. Now, I want to say there's a very natural response to the emotions that we feel over there, and that we really feel that we need a good hug. And maybe also in the past 2 years of what's going on in Israel, many people feel that we need this physical closeness. And this is something that is really something, I think that it's something very, very important. And not something that, I don't think that the quest is only, like, in many cases, people might say that it's only Yetzer Hara. It's only Yetzer, it's only your Ta'ava. It's only, Jake, we missed what I was saying at the end. You have to fill in the gaps before. Anyway, so we can look at it and say it's only Yetzer. It's only Taive. A boy wants to touch a girl wants to touch a boy. So obviously there's also Yetzer. There's also lust. There's also those kind of feelings. But there also are pure feelings, emotional feelings, regular, normal human being feelings that we need physical connection, and we need physical touch. And this is something that today in psychology, people understand it. And also there's a certain hormone that when you hug someone, called in Hebrew oxytocin, probably the same thing in English, that the body secretes when you feel comfortable and you feel closeness and you feel wellness and you feel love. Your body secretes. It helps. It introduces this hormone, and it's important for your lives. And so, what happens when it comes to the opposite gender? So I want to study with you a certain paragraph related to that question. I'm not sure I have it in English. I want to put it on in Hebrew, and just give me 1 minute, and I'll put it on the board. So Rav Kook has a little booklet called Midot Haraya. The Midot, Mida, the Musa, like Mida, I don't know how you translate that into English. I don't know, got no idea how you translate Midot, like a person who's got Midot. What traits? Maybe. But maybe it's talking about gaiva, chaos, anger, all those things that are connected to how we behave. And one of them, Rav Kook, one of the paragraphs that he talks about over there is called tzniut. And this is what Rav Kook writes about tzniut. Midat tzniut, I'm here in paragraph number 7. Midat tzniut goremet tovot rabot ba'olam. The fact that there's modesty in the world. When talking about modesty, he's talking about everything that's got to do with modesty. Mainly, he's talking about a kind of a gap between men and women. He's not talking only about clothes. Usually, we say tznius, we mean clothes. We're talking about behavior. We're talking about, but he's talking about when he talks here about midat tzniut, he means that there's a kind of a distance and a gap in general between men and women. Midat tzniut, Rav Kook says, goremet tovot rabot ba'olam. It causes a lot of good in the world. מתוך כך היא זוכה לדחות מפניה דברים שהיו טובים מצד עצמה. And therefore, because of the value of tzniut, because of its importance, it rejects and pushes to the side other good things, not bad things, good things. It pushes them to the side. אבל כיוון שמפני יצר האדם וכוחו החלש יגרמו לפרוץ במידת הצניעות, but because of our yetzer, and our weakness in front of the yetzer, and even though there are good things, but because of the yetzer, we might transgress the valuable, the proper boundaries connected to tzniut. Therefore, they are rejected. Shehi kiyumo shel ha'olam haruchani v'achumri. And this is the existence, meaning the world will survive and exist if we keep tzniut, if we keep the distance between men and women. And he continues to explain and expound. Midat ha'ava v'yedidut, love and friendship, bechol asimanim v'adiburim anochim, in all the signs and comfortable talk. Haya ra'ui liot shaveh ben aminim, should have been equal between men and women. Aval mipnei yikrat erech hatzniut, but because of the value, the important value of tzniut, nidchet midat eretz, the derech eretz, the civility, what should be, mean men and women should be equal. We should be behaving equally to everybody. But there are certain things that we will reject and put them on the side, sideline them because of tzniut, mimkoma, ad shelo lish'ol b'shlom isha. To such an extent that the Gemara says you're not supposed to ask a woman how she is. Now, I'll relate to that in a few more minutes. Hatzanua makir, someone that the value of tzniut is ingrained in him. Not because he hates females, he stays away from them. And he builds boundaries. But because of the general good. So you know that young men and women, they meet, and many times you meet a friend, especially you haven't seen him for some time, you give him a hug, and you give him a strong, nice hug. And lichora, that should have been the exact same thing when we meet a friend, a female friend. And but because of tzniut, we don't give that hug. We should be giving that hug. Rav Kook says it's normal. It should be equal between men and women, but we don't give that hug. Now, I'm not commenting now on what's accepted in Chutz La'aretz and so on. I remember coming out of a very important shul in London after Tfilat Shabbat, and everybody kissing everybody on the cheeks and so on. I'm sure it happens in many other places as well. And my children, when they meet their friends, they all give hugs to everybody, and some of them, those that do that, they give hugs and so on. Lichora should all be equal. But because there is a very strong value of tzniut, and because of its importance, and because the existence of the world, Rav Kook writes, is dependent on tzniut. And because of that, it sidelines other values. And the other value is equality among sexes. And it's important to note that it's not because we hate women, it's not because we feel they are less equal. Rav Kook says they are equal. Everything should be equal. It's not because they are not equal, but because we have this value of keeping the distance between men and women. And this goes also to the question, okay, so one other thing. When Rav Kook writes that the Gemara says you don't ask a woman how she is, so most of the poskim don't think that when you meet a woman, you're not allowed to ask her, Mashlomech, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? There can be two other poskim sometimes remark that the two kinds of instances that mainly the Gemara is talking about. Usually, when you ask someone how you are, you're not really interested in the answer. It's something polite, saying Shalom, Mashlomech, how are you doing? So no one's talking about that. That's like saying hello. There's no issue in saying hello. The thing is that let's say you're meeting someone's husband or fiance or something like that, and you say, please, and you don't know his wife, and you say, please send regards to your wife. Why are you sending regards to my wife? What you going to do with my wife? So that's one instance that like just sending a regards to wife. Now, obviously, it's different again. Tzniut is very much connected to geography and society. Very much. It's not the same in every single place. So if for whatever reason you were in Bnei Akiva and Bnei Akiva's co-ed and you know the girl and you're friends with the girl and maybe she's married today and you meet her husband and you say send regards, it's something completely normal, not something thought to be maybe you have some kind of special connection with him. Again, everything is connected. You have to be normal, not be normal. And the other instances, if you're asking not being polite, but you're trying to get into a very personal space. If you get into personal space, then that's not Peseder. That's not You're not supposed to go to those places. If someone's wife is sick, chas v'sholom, she got cancer, something bad, it's obvious and normal, and would be considered uncivil, but not only uncivil, unhalachic, to ask someone how's your wife doing if it's known that she's sick. It's not normal. And it's not only it's not normal, it's not mitzvah racha kamocha. If your wife was sick, and was something special, then you would want your friends to inquire about her and know how she's doing, because this is also your welfare, not only her welfare. Okay, so that's just a comment on that. But I'm going back to the source. I think that paragraph of Kook is absolutely amazing. I think it's a very, very profound and very basic paragraph to understand the many halachot relating to tzniut. So there are certain things that we should be doing them because it's civil, because it's normal. For instance, when you meet someone, handing out your hand and saying hello, but we don't do that among religious Jews because of the fine value of keeping a certain separation and a certain distance between men and women of the opposite sex, people of the opposite sex. And I think that is understanding that it's not because we hate women. And there's a whole issue today in the Western world of men that hate women, that because they do not have normal men-female relationships, they have developed a kind of a hatred of women and the sexuality that they represent, because it's usually non-nagish, non-accessible to some of men. So because they're so far away from women, they demonize them. And this is something that Rav Kook says. He says it's not because we hate women. It's got nothing to do with that. It's because that we would like everything to be equal, but it cannot be equal because of the dangers of breaching the boundaries. Now, I'm going to speak about another danger in one more minute, but Gadi raised his hand. He wants to say something. Ken, Baksha.
Rav, is that value of being tsanua that Rav Kook is talking about and the boundaries that you have to make, is that coming from a point of like lo tikru legal erva, that it's an isur, or it's like, no, it's a value and it's something we have to like just work on, but it's not necessarily a red line like Minatora?
It depends. Some things are mina Torah, some of the things are mina Rabbanan. There's a very big argument between the Rambam and the Ramban of whether the Torah prohibits itself to keep a boundary, or what the Torah forbids. That's the Rambam. The Rambam holds that the Torah itself is considered a halachic mitzvah doraita to keep a boundary, as it says, lo tikrevu legalot erva, lo tikrevu, don't go near. The Ramban holds that no, it's a rabbinic decree to keep a boundary and not a doraita decree. But I think that what Rav Kook is trying to say is, I don't think he's going into the argument of whether it's doraita or the Rabbanan. I think what Rav Kook is trying to explain in modern language, in a world that started already in his time to believe in equality of the sexes, to explain why there are certain things that will not behave equally to the opposite sex. And I want to add one other thing. We live in a world that we have an awareness that many women, and also I want to say males, men, have been sexually harassed or abused at some stage in their life. And when I grew up, not when you grew up, we didn't even know there were such things. We knew this, we knew of them, but probably didn't know anybody personal, never spoke about it, was never voiced. It was a completely non-issue. Today we live in a world knowing that many women are harassed to a certain extent. Nearly every single woman has felt some kind of sexual harassment, and that, and in many, many cases, people have been taken advantage, have been sexually exploited, and in many cases, or 90% of the cases, it's usually by someone that they know, that they are either friendly with or related to. And I think that this adds another dimension to what Rav Kook spoke about. If we understand, if we adhere, if all society would adhere to two very simple principles, many of the sexual assaults and harassment could be avoided. One of them is yichud. Yichud means that a male and a female that are not married to one another cannot be in a solitary place where no one can disturb them. It can be a locked house, it can be a forest, it can be somewhere where they can be completely alone and no one will disturb them. And in order for someone to exploit someone else sexually, they have to be alone. Never can it be done in public. I'm not saying that a woman obviously can be harassed on the bus, but only to a very certain extent. On a bus, on a train, but to a certain extent. A real sexual violation, by the way, not only women, men as well, but will usually be in a secluded place. Now, if you are makpid on yichud, saying you as a man or you as a woman, and you makpid on yichud, then in most cases, there will never be any kind of sexual abuse. That's one thing. I'm not saying that cannot be, but it's much rarer. Now, obviously, there are certain people that it's impossible that they will always be able to take advantage. The nucleus family, brothers, sisters, fathers and mothers and so on, grandparents, uncles. In those cases, it's much more difficult. But definitely between some of the family, cousins, friends, it's possible to maintain that halacha. The other one is a touch, not to have any physical contact. Now, when two people meet, you can give a hug. Now, a hug can be something polite, 2-3 seconds, and that's where it ends. But it also can turn very easily into something sexual. And if you've ever been hugged too much, more than your liking, then maybe you know what I'm talking about. Now, I don't have this only from women. Like, usually I've never been hugged by other women other than my wife, or my mother. But I talk about friends. When a male friend hugs me more than to my liking, it causes me a violent reaction. I can't stand it. And I'm going to share. I'm going to tell you something about that in a minute. But if and how many girls and women in the world it's acceptable to give a hug when you meet someone, um, and not comfortable with this hug, or the length of the hug, or the force of the hug. And I think that this is an additional level on how to maintain and not why the ilchot of tzniut, of modesty, they also help with another dimension. And they help men and women not to be abusers, because we don't allow us ever to be in such a position, and not to be abused. Now, it's simple and obvious that no law and no boundary will stop a predator. A predator, if he is a predator, he will do whatever, he will get to his prey. He'll work hard, eventually he'll do it. But by keeping yichud and by keeping shmirat negi'ah, we are making it much more difficult for him or for her. And I'm specifically saying him or her, because both things can be. And I'm also talking about between two males. I'm definitely talking about also between two males. And here I want to tell you a story. I have a friend. I don't know if I've told you the story before. If I haven't, I'm telling it now. And if I have, then I'll repeat it. No problem. I'm repeating it. It's important. So I have a friend. Every time he talks to me, I have a friend today. He talks to me with his hands. Did I tell you the story? So yeah, every time he talks, he pats me and he touches me and he jabs me and he's all over me, and I can't stand it. Now I'm not homophobic. I don't have any problem with touch. I can give a hug to a good friend. I can give a hug to my children. I don't have a problem with it. I hug, especially I hug all my army friends. It's acceptable. But I can't stand the fact that when someone talks to me, he touches me. And like I lived with this for a long time because a friend, I don't want to offend him. And then one time when he came up to, and I was always avoiding him a bit. When I came up to him, he came up to me, and again he puts his hands on me or jabs me or whatever. I said to him, David, please don't touch me when you talk to me. Like that. He said, okay, sorry, didn't know, I apologize, no problem. The next time I met him, it started again. And then I snapped. I said, David, I told you something. And that was it. Never again has he touched me. Never again. Now, it's my personal space. I don't like it. Ask permission, and I'll tell you what I feel. And this is between two men. It's not between a man and a woman or a woman and a man. And I think these things are important. Respecting someone's personal space. Now, between friends, I'm saying there's not a law, okay? There's not something that I can say it's prohibited or it's isur or something wrong. I'm just saying be aware of your body language and your behavior. And this has got to do with men and with women and with children and with everything. There was another issue of someone that he was a violent person in the issue in Alon Shvut. And whenever he came to speak to me, he always came, whenever he spoke to anybody, he always spoke to you from 4 centimeters distance. 4 centimeters distance. His nose was touching my cheek or my ear or whatever. But he was a problematic person, unfortunately committed suicide at one stage. But I'm just saying, this is a violation. We don't like it. And I think that the whole idea of tzniut, again, sustains two values. One is not transgressing non-appropriate physical contact or any kind of like keeping the distance between men and women that are not your mother, your grandmother, your sister, obviously your spouse, your wife, and so on. Anybody that's around you. Now, I work in a co-ed workplace. I have secretaries, I have women that I work with, and so on. Thank God I live in a society when it's obvious two things. One, men and women don't touch at all. It's not everybody, by the way. I have co-workers that when they meet, they shake hands, they hug, but the general atmosphere is that there's usually no physical contact between men and women. And the other thing is that relatively, the women come to work modestly dressed. Not everybody's religious, but the environment is a bit more modest. And these two uh, uh, characters of the place where I work, I think are a very healthy environment of how a co-ed workplace should behave. And I think that there needs to be a dress code, both for men and women, not only for women, both for women, men and women in every single workplace in the world. I don't think it's appropriate that a woman comes to work in a bra or a man comes to work in a tight vest or a shirt completely without sleeves. Both of these things are not acceptable because we are human beings and we are sexual human beings and we're attracted to our physical appearances and other people's physical appearances. And when we go to work, we want to be in a comfortable environment with as little as possible of sexual eroticity. And these are things that can allow a tznius society, a modest society, to thrive. I do not want to work, and I'm saying this lechatchila, I do not want to work only in a male workplace. I think that women have a crucial contribution to the workforce. I think that women are part of life, and I do not think that any workplace that has influence on something that's going on in the world should be exclusively of only one sex. I'm not saying every single workplace. There can be certain things that that they are solely for one gender. That's okay. I could be said. I'm saying in general. Okay, women and men, both of them are conducive to the world, and both of them have something to contribute to the world, each of them in a different way. And I think that keeping women out of the workforce or out of life, I think that the world will suffer from that. And I think that the fact that women have to have education today and can contribute to the world, I think that's mishamayim. I don't think it's an accident. I don't think it's a bad thing that happened to the world. I think it's a very good thing that happened to the world. I think it's the biggest, one of the biggest contributions to one of the biggest revolutions in the past 100 years, if not the biggest revolution in the past 100 years. And that's why when Rav Kook speaks about the equality among sexes, he's already relating. Rav Kook died in 1935. The equality of the sexes had already began in force in the 20s and following the First World War. And he's relating to the biggest revolution that will yet happen, hasn't happened yet, but will yet happen. And therefore he's saying, in this world, he's not saying anything about he didn't say anything about the equality. On the contrary, he said there should be equality between men and women, but there are certain values that will are more important than that value of equality, and therefore we will there are certain things that we will not behave equally between men and women. Okay, so that's with regard to that question, and therefore, if you're going out with someone, with a female, with a girl, it's obvious that we thrive, we want that physical, emotional connection and security. But halakha recognizes physical contact between men and women only in the context of marriage. We do not recognize anything else. There is no other possibility unless it's a situation of life and death. And therefore, in that situation, no, there cannot be physical touch. even if we need it for emotional support, we should look and be getting the emotional support elsewhere, and not from someone that I'm going out with, even if she's a very good friend of mine, or not going out with her, but she's a very good friend of mine. But that kind of physical, emotional support, I should be getting elsewhere. I was just recently, yesterday, I was asked about someone that is divorced, and he divorced from a very, very difficult marriage. A man from a very, very difficult marriage. He was completely in a dead emotional marriage for many, many years. And he asked me if he can meet, he's going out with girls and he has lots of problems. Can you meet them in a secluded apartment? And I said, no, you cannot meet them in a secluded apartment. And I don't, going out with someone, I don't, I can, in my eyes, it can only lead to problems. And it's much better. And I didn't allow it. I think it was wrong. So, remarks, requests, questions? So, the next question.
Rav, can I ask a question quickly?
Yes, Baksha.
So if there's a couple who's dating, and it's either they will be dating and having physical contact, so is there no situation to, like, if it's going to keep them together and keep them, that they'll be able to commit halachically when they're married, but they're just not willing to do it now? But is there no room to give like any sort of heter? And it's helping them at least stay committed to each other, but they're only not shomer nagia with each other, and they're only there to get to a certain point. Is there no then room for like an extreme case?
Well, can you rephrase the question?
If to keep a couple, let's say, from, but only with each other, they're only going to be over this issue with each other, what do you say to that?
I think that's a personal question. It's not something I want to say generally. I would say, come and ask me on a private, personal basis, and I'll answer that. And the answer will not be necessarily what's expected of what I said now. There are different circumstances and different answers in certain private situations. And I can't, and for one person, I would say yes, and the other person, I'll say no, even though the questions might seem similar, but the circumstances of both the people are different, and therefore they'll also be getting different answers. And that's why in the halakha world, shutim, shelot utshuvot over the generations have a very big importance, in some cases even more than the Shulchan Aruch, because the Shulchan Aruch is a general, let's say, law applicable everywhere and any time, supposedly. And then comes the shutim. And the shutim bring us situations that it's impossible to write in the Shulchan Aruch. And I just read about why the Pitchei Tshuva, if you know the Pitchei Tshuva and Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, or Sha'arei Tshuva and other parts of the Shulchan Aruch, what is their contribution? And the contribution is taking these, let's say, this general law of the Shulchan Aruch and turning it into something much more personal, applicable to place and time. And therefore, I think that's the answer that I'll give you in connection to that.
So it's case dependent, and we can't take the general and apply it to that. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
So, do you think marriage is essential? Question number 6. As you said, once a couple is married, they seem like they are now safe and nothing can break them. Maybe it's better to stay as a couple and keep working on the relationship. So the truth is that I think that anybody that thinks that, I think that you all know today, that the fact that a couple is married doesn't mean anything. It does mean, but it doesn't mean enough. That being married will not keep a couple today together. And I think that what the person asked in the question is something that we need to apply to our marriages. Meaning, every morning we put on tefillin, when we put the ritzuot, how do you call ritzuot in English?
Wrapping your fingers.
The wrapping, yeah. When you wrap our fingers with that black piece of skin, we say "Verastich li leolam, verastich li betzedek v'mishpat v'chesed v'emunah, verastich li." סליחה, כן, וידעת את השם. נכון? Did I say it correct? No, verastich li leolam בסוף. כן, verastich li leolam. Where is the pasuk? I got mixed up now. ורסתיך לי לעולם, ורסתיך לי בצדק משפט וחסד ורחמים, ורסתיך לי באמונה וידעת את השם. So, that pasuk from Hosea is a contradiction. The pasuk begins, ve'erastich li le'olam. Now that's a complete impossibility. Ve'erastich by definition means I will be betrothed, engaged. Now, Erusin precedes marriage, precedes Nisuin. And you cannot, by definition, it's temporary. So why does the Navi Hosea say, Verastich li leolam? What is the purpose? It's impossibility. And I think that the reason is that the Navi is saying that there's a certain dimension of marriage, of engagement, of being betrothed, that we need to preserve for all our married life. And that is that when a couple is just dating or engaged, we have a very strong a very strong notion of trying to please each other, of trying to entice one another, trying to find favor one in each other's eyes, because we don't take him yet for granted, because we're trying to win their heart. We're still at the very, very beginning of forming our relationship. And this is something that we need to preserve for all our lives, to always have a dimension that I always need to find favor in my wife's eyes, even if I'm married already for 20 years. I need to be like someone still trying to win her heart, still trying to find favor, still being betrothed and not married. And someone that feels that, I'm married, I've made it, I'm home, and I don't have to make an effort anymore. That's when marriages start going sour. We need to be at home. We need to feel comfortable, and at the same time, we need to work on our finding favor in our spouse's eyes for the rest of our lives, all the time. And that's why, yes, we need to be married, because marriage allows us the security of knowing that me and my wife, we are together for life, and we're going to be working on making this the best thing in the world. And that security is something very, very important for people, for everybody. זהו, טוב. תודה רבה. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for making the effort. Let me just look at my diary for next week. 1 minute. Stop the recording.